Hello all. We're going into the last session before dinner, for the Jubilee dinner. It's the dissemination from 2 Erasmus Plus project and final dissemination from the project Wicked, which from the EAAE side has been headed by Ivan Cabrera, who is at the moment spreading the good news in the report from the project. It's printed and it's up here. And after that, Noor will talk about the EFIAD project, which is at the very beginning. But Ivan, please. And then I'll say a few words in the end, and we'll move towards dinner afterwards. But please, Ivan, we are looking forward to this. And I think I've read the report, and one is always afraid that these kinds of projects ends up with nothing. But in this case, we have really ended up with something. Please.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ivan Cabrera. I'm currently the Dean of the Valencia School of Architecture in Spain, and I'm the President of the Spanish Conference of Schools of Architecture. I am about to start with the presentation of the results of the Erasmus Plus project that has been carried out by the association within these 3 years. In addition to seeing, well, the results, the final report is uploaded on the website, so it's reachable by means of your tablets or anyhow. We have printed some hard copies. Some of them already have them. Those that haven't, just please feel free to approach the platform and you can take one copy for you. So, well, I've been told not to leave the microphone, to keep it, so I will try to do my best. Well, Erasmus Plus is the current European Union program for education, training, youth and sport. The Erasmus Plus programs are focused on promoting skills, employability, and supporting the modernization of the aforementioned fields. With a budget of 14.7 million euros for a period of 7 years, 1/3 of this budget provides funding for partnerships between educational institutions, enterprises, and non-profit organizations, as well as for reforms to modernize education and training in order to promote innovation, entrepreneurship, and employability. Organizations wanting to participate in Erasmus Plus can enroll in a number of networking and development activities. Proposals have to be formalized as projects which should be included in one of these categories. Key Action 1, Learning Mobility for Individuals, which maybe is the most popular one. Key Action 2, Innovation and Good Practices, which is the one that we will switch in. Key Action 3, Support for Policy Reform. Jean Monnet, with a section special for opportunities for teaching, research, and policy debate on the EU and its policies. And finally, sports, which is quite easy to understand. Well, within Key Action 2, strategic partnerships is a category which provides opportunities to strengthen cooperation and networking between organizations. The development, testing, and implementation of innovative practices, the recognition and validation of knowledge, skills, and competencies, etc. As set out in its mission statement, EAAE has ambitions to play an important strategic role in developing architectural education and linking academia with the professional practice. This wish laid behind EAAE's motivation for initiating this project. The discussion on the convenience of carrying out a major project dates back to September 2013 in Hania. Those first conversations crystallized in a project draft that was debated in Hasselt in March 2014. Having agreed on the project approach and contents, the only issue left was selecting those entities that would be formally involved in the project. Since according to the Erasmus Plus program regulations, the maximum number of participants on this kind of project is limited to 10. With both the commitment and the right tools, EAAE was in the best position for carrying out a project whose intentions were to tackle the weak problems that architectural education was facing by then and was going to face in the near future. For architectural education and professional practice, the new reality encompasses many facets, such as the need of improving architects' employability and social impact. the proper preparation for a strong demand for diversification, and the increasingly relevant role of sustainability and heritage management in the time ahead. Therefore, the project raised the question of how to teach architecture in that context in Europe, and especially how curriculum and teaching should be adapted to the new societal and professional situations, so-called new normal. Well, the project involved the Architects' Council of Europe active participation from the very beginning because of their unbeatable expertise in architecture daily practice. Since according to Erasmus Plus program regulations didn't consider EAAE eligible for applying, the Oslo School of Architecture and Design, which by then hosted the presidency, took the role of applicant organization, so became the first institution in the list. That left space for 7 more formal partners. Candidacies were presented after the aforementioned meeting in Hasselt, and a final selection was made based on expertise on the 3 main topics to be worked: geographical representativeness and support received by other fellow schools. Having completed the list of 10 participants, the application was submitted to the European Commission and approved for funding in the summer of 2014, with a final amount of €284,815. The project has run from September the 1st, 2014 to August the 31st, 2017, formally finalizing today with this dissemination and further discussion. Before describing the project's contents and results, I would like to give the floor to Professor Laran Lundevall, who is representing today the Oslo School of Architecture and Design, along with its dean, which is also with us, with its rector. It's the exact name of the position. Taral will tell us about the importance and impact that spearheading this project has meant for his school.
Thank you, Ivan. At this stage, I would just say a few words on behalf of AHO, the school in Oslo. Now, this is actually the first time our school has been in the position of managing, well, it's not an enormous sum, but still a sum that should be divided properly amongst all the participators in the project. It has also been our responsibility to manage the timeline, the coordination, the various kinds of inspirational, transnational aspirations that we have had permanently for 3 years. And on behalf of our school, I would like to say that EAAE has given us the opportunity to learn something completely new. We have got new friends, new network connections, and this, in the end of the process today, I think it's a nice thing to say that we are pleased to have got this opportunity. We have learned a lot from all of you. Thank you. I will not comment anything on the project content, since I'm sure you will do it much better, Ivan. Thank you.
Okay. I've been requested to talk a little bit slower, so I will try to do my best. You know, being Mediterranean doesn't help to talk slower, even when you switch to English. But well, I will do my best. Well, according to that was the image supposed to be in the background when Taral was speaking. Sorry for this mistake. Yeah. According to the modernization agenda of higher education systems in Europe, few of our institutions are recognized as world-class in the global research-oriented university rankings. However, there are fields and disciplines within the European educational and research system, such as architecture, that hold a substantial innovation potential in terms of achieving smart, sustainable, and inclusive growth. The different national cultures of architectural education in Europe during the last 2 decades have implemented a modernization agenda that has affected not only their scope and curriculum, but also the way that they operate. Architecture also finds a historically based strong connection between education, research, and professional practice, demonstrated on many levels, such as the cooperation between EAAE and Architects Council of Europe. That increasingly global and well-connected scenario becomes the perfect background for discussion of matters such as architecture education. Learning could be defined as a process that, by means of practice and experience, increases the potential for improved performance and future apprenticeship, leading definitely to a real change. Nowadays, the principles of architectural education are very much in accordance with contemporary views on qualities in higher education. Being creativity one of the main abilities to be transferred, the system is based on studio and project work directed towards solving problems. Teamwork and multidisciplinary work are given priority, and the creative process and evaluation is at the center of the learning process. Despite the fruitful results of this modus operandi, there's a need for further modernization of architectural education in order to strengthen the social relevance and the potential for social impact, and to develop entrepreneurial skills for architects. Increasing our students' skills on these newly arrived aspects will strengthen their employability and their abilities for a good performance at any context. But positions for practicing architects are constantly changing and depend on the European country. Hence, architectural education is definitely a complex challenge. Along with many other sectors, the architectural profession continues to suffer from the economic crisis with effects that differ according to each country. But surprisingly, more architects than ever are being educated in Europe nowadays, and in this context that has received the name of new normal. When trying to define it, first findings reveal that the situation and context are still changing, and the frames for practicing architecture differ geographically. Hence, this undisputed new normal, understood as a still photograph, doesn't exist. But this uncertainty is an answer in itself, and with a deeper observation, certain trends can be intuited, such as the increasing relevance of heritage and sustainability. EAAE, by means of this project, intends to foresee the near future in order to provide European architecture schools with good advice to rethink their teaching methods and their curricula. Despite the fact that immediate horizon for architecture has been thoroughly described as changing and rather unpredictable, so far 3 aspects have been identified as important and widely mentioned issues. First, the adequate professional knowledge for reconquering roles and improving employability. Second, the proper expertise in heritage in a continent which is mostly already built. And finally, the sustainable thinking, not only considering the classical energy-related aspects. But these 3 topics soon reveal themselves as weak problems. In the case of professional knowledge, when it comes to establish both the relationship with the right architectural design education and the contents of both terms, no absolute solutions exist. When it comes to deal with heritage, it's impossible to generalize or propose exportable solutions, since national and regional intricacies demand specific and adapted approaches. Finally, sustainability is much more than decreasing the carbon footprint of the built environment. It means working with certain limitations that become possibilities. In a situation with a decreasing building activity, having foreseen a rather unpredictable future, and after verifying that even the most constant aspects have turned into weak problems, it seems that our research is seriously endangered. But we have to acknowledge that architecture as an education, a discipline, and a profession is maybe the best discipline to redefine and release its potential for problem solving and innovation within a new economic and societal context. New knowledge for dealing with our selected weak problems has been operated, having organized the project in 3 different think tanks. Teaching architectural design and professional knowledge, that will be often referred by means of its acronym TADPK, heritage and sustainability. Each think tank has been composed by representatives of both the European Association of Architectural Education and Architects' Councils of Europe. In addition to the representatives from the Oslo School of Architecture and Design, and the other 7 schools finally selected because of their academic relevance and expertise. Schools of architecture have been employed not only as suppliers of experts, but also as laboratories where the good ideas are created. The project leadership was initially responsibility of the EAAE's president, Karl Otto Ellefsen, who withdrew having completed 2 out of the 3 seasons and named me until the project closure. Being EHO, the applicant organization, the research administration staff enrolled in the tasks of providing administrative support. This responsibility was initially entrusted to Erling Rognes Solbu, who was later on taken over by Anne-Marie Overas. EAAE role as institution which promoted and led the project has required an active participation of its secretary, who you know is Inge Lenz. And then let's go to the think tank researchers. Think tank on teaching architectural design and professional knowledge has been composed by 7 researchers. Ivan Cabrera, who is myself. I have acted as EAAE representative. Dubravko Bashik and Roger Reeve represented ACE. Finally, representing the involved school, Tara Lundevall and Thomas McQuillan have represented the Oslo School of Architecture and Design, and Jordi Franquesa and Ana Ramos worked on behalf of the Higher Technical School of Architecture of Barcelona. Think Tank on Heritage has been composed by 9 researchers. Lovelyn Keeley acted as EAAE representative. Eugene Panescu and Sarah Van Rompuy represented ACE. And in this case, 3 schools have been engaged. Biplebutz and Konrad van Klempel represented the Faculty for Architecture and Art of the University of Hasselt. Thomas Scheffler and Petr Forlik worked on behalf of the Faculty of Architecture of the Czech Technical University in Prague. And finally, Stefano Musso and Giovanna Franco represented the Department of Sciences for Architecture of the University of the Studies of Genoa. Finally, Think Tank on Sustainability has been composed by 9 researchers as well. Maria Faraone has acted as EAAE representative. Maria do Carmo Caldeira and Veronica Schrepfer have represented ACE. And the 3 remaining schools have been represented by Maria Vittoria Cardinale and Adalberto Delbo in the case of the Department of Architecture of the Politecnico di Milano, Suzanne Comosa and Negar Sanam Bensi in the case of the Faculty of Architecture and the Built Environment of the Technical University of Delft, and Zeno Bogdanescu and Ana Maria de Villa in the case of the University of Architecture and Urbanism Ion Mincu in Bucharest. Well, in addition to these 29 people, it's important to highlight the participation of many stakeholders such as students, additional faculty, and administration staff of all institutions involved, as well as our ACE colleagues and a vast range of professional studios, governmental entities, authorities, and citizens. Well, let's switch now to the challenges that we decided to face. The most relevant priority addressed by the project is contributing to the modernization of Europe's higher education systems as outlined in the 2011 Modernization Agenda. Within this frame, the project has established 2 main objectives, which have guided researchers' interest during this work. First, to strengthen the architectural graduate's ability to face the big problems and thus improve his or her social impact and employability. To achieve this, contents and methods of architectural education have to be reconsidered and developed. And second, to assist educational institutions in developing their curricula for lifelong learning by means of the new knowledge gained. Having fixed these main objectives, but before detailing them, it's important to formulate some general and consequently intermediate challenges whose fulfillment would solve most of the current difficulties in architecture practice and not only the 3 issues under study. To strengthen students and architects' research expertise to tackle complex problems within multidisciplinary teams, it's very important. So is to develop design processes to contribute to the complex, sustainable, and long-lasting urban and territorial transformation process. To balance and integrate cross-professionalism, creativity, and flexibility in the curricula and teaching methods to better lay the ground for entrepreneurship and employability. And finally, to foster good ideas for implementation in the real world and endow architectural graduates with leadership. A deeper detailing of these challenges in the real in the project, requires classifying them according to different criteria. If we classify challenges according to purpose, in the case of pedagogical methods, several specific challenges can be mentioned, such as implementing new ways of teaching, which imply more active learning and strategy-oriented teaching in order to increase architecture students' critical thinking. Devoting attention to methodologies for learning in order to improve the students' ability to create. Encouraging new technologies and methodologies to improve students' ability to research a comprehensive and accurate reading of problems, which is starting to become a great lack among our students. Fourth, proposing perspectives and examples of good practice, not only to foster innovative response, but also to support existing endeavors. And finally, promoting research-based architectural education, since it encompasses many recommendable abilities for a successful architecture practice. Along with the implementing new strategy in teaching, it's very important to make clear the contents to be taught. Specific challenges for designing an adequate curriculum structure should consider investigating commonalities and differences in approaches to teaching and how they relate to curriculum structure and educational outcomes expected in the professional world, providing advice of the right location and obligatory or elective nature of certain matters within the curricula, and finally boosting already ongoing shifts like integrating heritage or sustainability into curricula with a multivalence approach, not the classical one. Finally, in the case of continuous professional development, it's important to focus on 4 topics. Discovering which features do employers appreciate the most when hiring new employees. Defining which type of knowledge is acceptable to be learned outside the academia, so when students are graduated. Previewing emerging topics that might become fundamental in the near future or that maybe are already fundamental. Providing advice about the appropriate hub for each type of continuous professional development on the role that each stakeholder might play. And when we mention hub, we say, okay, is the right place for continual professional development the chambers of architects, other governmental entities, the universities? This is something that will be discussed. Well, as explained before, the project has identified 3 subtopics or weak problems that have undergone investigation. Each one presents specific challenges which are thoroughly listed in the final report. To mention just some of the most relevant ones, in the case of architectural design and professional knowledge, we could highlight studying the new roles and tasks of the architectural profession, and secondly, quantifying the period that employers find acceptable for a recently graduated architect to become a full practicing architect, which is something that all of us were very curious about, and the answers were surprising. Regarding specific challenges relating to heritage, we could mention, we could highlight actually, because there are so many. Identifying the range of issues that impinge on curricula and pedagogy in the field of heritage, and seeking appropriate pedagogical methods and integrating heritage transdisciplinary nature into the curriculum. And finally, in the case of specific challenges related to sustainability, we could highlight acknowledging that architecture plays an important role in achieving the cultural transformation required to create a sustainable environment, and developing mutual understanding among architects, technical experts, and building managers. Well, from now on, you may be noticing that there are certain topics that are repeating once and again and again. They might turn into results. Well, let's talk now about the activities that we've been performing. The research process, in order to meet all these challenges, has been sequenced by means of a series of activities distributed in 3 seasons and depicted on this chart. There are 3 charts. This chart that belongs to the first season. All participant institutions attended a first joint meeting in Hania in September 2014, as mentioned previously. And after that, the first season encompassed for each think tank 2 one-day encounters called transnational project meetings, from now on TMPs, and 1 4-day activity called staff teaching, training, or learning events, from now on called TE. TMPs were aimed to discuss and evaluate relevant topics, and to plan, manage, and evaluate TEs. This second type and longer events have been crucial for testing and implementing good practices, and have provided opportunities for interaction among students, teachers, and professionals. Results were uploaded to the website and disseminated at the EAAE event held in Milan in August 2015. The second season followed the same scheme of 2 TMPs and 1 TE, per think tank, followed by the reports uploading to the website and their dissemination at the EAAE event held in Delft in September 2016. In the case of the third season and final one, this pattern of 2 TMPs and 1 TE per think tank has been complemented by up to 3 additional meetings of a more reduced group of researchers focusing on the elaboration of this final report, which was uploaded to the website this August and is being disseminated to the EAAE Bordeaux. Well, let's talk right now about the tools that have been used. Let's like a fast overview. The activities previously described have been conducted by the previously listed think tank members who have employed a whole set of research tools. Let's now make a light overview, as I mentioned, of these tools, which will include allusions to the moments when they were employed. In the case of survey of questionnaires, they are the first tool we will talk about. During the first steps of their work, researchers belonging to the ADPK and heritage think tanks decided that in order to define properly the state of play of their wicked problem, a survey of questionnaire would provide them with valuable information. The ADPK think tank launched an international survey about professional knowledge included in the curriculum of European schools of architecture. Composed by a set of just 10 very simple questions, it was addressed to 18 schools with a fair cultural and geographical representativeness. Similarly, Heritage think tank adopted a questionnaire in order to get an overview of the weight given to conservation and restoration in different curricula across Europe. Composed by this questionnaire set by the heritage people, was composed by 29 questions grouped in different topics, and it received the response of more than 70 schools. Let's talk now about interviews. Having defined the state of play and outlined a strategy during the first season, the ADPK think tank members devoted the second and third season mainly to a series of interviews with architectural practices, public offices, employing architects, senior students, recently graduated architects and docents from both Oslo and Barcelona. Let's talk now about a third type of tool, which are the relationship matrices. When facing the complexity in which heritage-related teaching and professional activity, heritage think tank researchers decided to build and use a relationship matrix as a supplementary tool in order to contextualize properly the input of the different stakeholders. This matrix itself constitutes one of the most remarkable contributions of this think tank to the final result. Well, let's talk now about case studies. A case study is an informal methodology employed by researchers when a deeper knowledge of a topic is more easily reachable by means of a practical example instead of by means of pure theory or abstract ideas. Heritage think tank members have employed case studies as one of their primary tools during their research. During the first season, the TE held in Genoa evolved around Palazzo Belimbau, a building representing the demands of significant architecture subject to change. During the second season, the TE held in Prague dealt with different cases with a special focus on the Zburg industrial coal mine area in the Pilsen region, representing the reclamation of redundant industrial buildings and areas. Finally, during the third season, the TE held in Hasselt devoted most of the attention to the Groothuizen Palace in Bruges and on the Zwartzusterklooster, a monastic site in Antwerp, which along with the aforementioned palace represent the question of adaptive reuse of historic buildings. Similarly, sustainability think tank members have employed study cases as well, whose topics will be described later on. Let's talk now about visits. Wow, so shiny here that it's difficult to appreciate the pictures, but well. Anyhow, all of these pictures are contained in the final report, and you have a full color version in the website, so it's not that trouble right now. Well, as I was mentioning, let's talk about visits. Architecture as physical phenomenon needs to be lived in order to get a good understanding. Nothing can provide us better comprehension of our object of interest than visiting it personally. Case studies employed by both the heritage and sustainability think tank always included visits to the buildings and areas under studies. About lectures, all think tank members have used lectures at some point during their research when they have involved in their activities other collectives which are more reduced knowledge or background of the topic to be worked, such as the students that have collaborated in the workshops and charrettes. and talking about workshops, TDPK think tank members organized a workshop as the main activity of the first season TE held in Barcelona in May 2015. Up to 16 Bachelor in Architecture senior students from ENSAP enrolled in a workshop focused on the electronic portfolio that these students were elaborating for their minor thesis, and which connections does it establish with the academia and the professional world. During the second and the third season, these, the newly labeled as workshops, consisted on a series of meetings arranged with different parties closely related to the linkage between academia and professional world, such as master's students, docents, and employers, in order to interview them and document their opinion on several matters related to the topic under research. The workshops organized by the Heritage Think Tank now focus on the aforementioned case studies that we have seen on the screen and enrolled students from the university which hosted the event. Workshop activities included presentations by staff and students of case studies in progress at each school. They also included visits to the worked building and sites, engagement of students by means of interactive sessions and a small group work, presentations and summary discussions, including final reflections. Well, let's talk right now about a slightly different type of workshop, which is a charrette. The term charrette refers to an intensive collaborative session where a group of designers draft a solution to a design problem. Charrettes could be also defined as a specific kind of workshop where the time limitation, the concentration of participants in a concrete place, and a certain level of development of the final proposals play a significant role. Sustainability think tank researchers found in charrettes a fantastic possibility for a short, time-limited, intensive exercise performed by students and docents from different educational, geographical, and societal backgrounds mixed in groups. In the first charrette held in Delft, which is the picture, the center of the investigation was the Cinerama block from the 1950s, the important after-war reconstruction period in the Netherlands. In the second charrette, held in Bucharest, the project area chosen was in a rural context characterized by a growing phenomenon of depopulation. The Transylvanian village of Dealufrumos represented a built heritage in need to be considered carefully. Finally, in the third and last charrette, held in Milan, focused on the Bobisa drop area, a brownfield site in the north of Milan. This area represents a crucial node for urban regeneration strategies for the city. Well, let's talk about quite an interesting tool for research, which are debates. Debates have been a research tool used by all think tanks researchers since transnational project meeting session usually consisted on done typology, and most of the TE activities ended with a meeting of the think tank members where the evaluation of the project's progress was conducted. This methodology often provided freedom enough to suggest ideas which might guide the next steps following the research. However, other specific debates have been scheduled, such as the one performed by TDPK members along with all the students and other docents involved in their first workshop. Finally, it could look as something very naive, but it's important. The elaboration of reports was not a choice for think tank researchers and project leaders, since the Erasmus Plus regulations request their presentation according to a certain calendar and procedures. However, the exercise of reporting the intellectual output of each year emerged as a fruitful tool for catalyzing the research progress and scheduling the road ahead. At the end of each TE, project partners have produced the so-called teaching week problem reports, which were based on the work and findings of the corresponding season. After the first and second season, reports elaborated by the different think tank authors cover exclusively the approach, events, and results of the corresponding season, and were individually uploaded to the website and disseminated in the association event, and they are still available on the website if you want to check them. However, the reports elaborated after the third season encompass all 3 seasons and have served as a basis for the final report that we are disseminating today. Well, this final report has been structured in 5 major chapters. The first chapter provides readers with a comprehensive background of the project as a whole, with frequent light references to the specificities of the performance of each think tank. Then, as agreed during the last final report working group meeting, each think tank final report has been preserved in its integrity. and included in the final report as an individual chapter, constituting hence the second, third, and fourth chapters. The final fifth chapter recovers a global point of view and offers the reader a selection of the most relevant findings and recommendations with many interesting transversal reflections. The amount of information produced during these 3 years of work is more than considerable, and any single document has its relevance. Nevertheless, including it all in this project final report might have endangered its adequacy and success, since it would have meant a too excessive and extensive document. Therefore, all accessory data, which hasn't been considered indispensable for a fine project understanding and a fruitful dissemination of results, has been packed in up to 11 annexes, different annexes, which have been uploaded to the EAAE website and can be reached in the same page as the final report is available. Well, so knowing the people, knowing the challenges, knowing the tools, let's know now which have been the results. Well, methods used in the project have indeed proved to be very fruitful and to provide fruitful results. Each of the three think tanks have presented intermediate findings related to their primary topics. These findings document interesting differences between schools and institutions involved, and between the different cultural and professional attitudes in the countries that have been studied. The first and most obvious intermediate finding, which is this one, is that all three think tanks point out that specific professional areas characterized by wicked problems. You know, any single topic chosen has become a wicked problem. In the case of TDPK, it's almost impossible to clearly define borders between architectural design and professional knowledge, and the continuous change and growth of possible relevant knowledge are overwhelming. In the case of heritage, it's impossible to propose one-size-fits-all solutions to architectural education across Europe, since different building history, cultural and traditions, and different national and regional intricacies require customized approaches. Finally, sustainability issues can only be met by taking into account a vast range of aspects, further than those exclusively related to energy, in an iterative process of questioning and redefinition. The second intermediate finding is that all three tanks are reluctant to describe the situation as a new normal. On the contrary, they stress that rapid changes in public, political, and cultural awareness of qualities of the built environment are prevalent these days, and architects simply have to adapt. The third intermediate finding is that the lack of undisputed vocabulary and clear definitions, even for the terms professional knowledge, heritage, and sustainability, which are the name of the think tanks. In discussions, the establishment of a common terminology has become a must in order to bridge different educational systems, cultural roots, and prevailing problems. Discussions on terminology seldom led to full agreement, but it's an important achievement that the think tanks and the WIC project in general has been able to develop clear, useful terminology for discussions of these topics. Therefore, in the case of TDPK, think tank members have agreed to define an architect's knowledge with 3 elements: knowledge of the discipline, practical knowledge, and professional knowledge. In the case of the heritage think tank, they have widened their focus, discussing not only the buildings to be preserved, but also those restored and adaptively reused. And finally, sustainability think tank members have continuously discussed the terminology they use and have suggested this definition. Sustainability means working within the limitations and turning those limitations into possibilities. The fourth intermediate finding relates to the diversity. The practice of architecture in society shows huge differences in Europe. To some extent, even the core elements of the discipline, such as theoretic curriculum, content, and the way of designing training, differs. The 3 think tanks describe this as a vivid challenge in their work. The 5th intermediate finding is the acknowledgement that multidisciplinary teams are the future builders. All think tank reports describe that future tasks need teamwork with a variety of insights. The 6th intermediate finding is the agreement on the fact that sustainability and heritage challenges should be met with the same tools. Both heritage and sustainability reports emphasize on wide, open, but still analytical processes based on research, but also iterative and holistic. And the seventh and final intermediate finding is that the working methods described above make deeper social understanding, practicing management, and entrepreneurship absolutely necessary. Hence, knowledge on society, teamwork, and entrepreneurship increase employability for freshly graduated architects. Well, let us move now to the final findings and recommendations that have been classified according to the different purposes described in the project application. Well, regarding pedagogical methods, all think tanks give a common clear advice. More emphasis should be put on teamwork ability. Working within a team with multiple insights should be regarded as a necessary tool for solving the architectural problems of today. Then each think tank has come with specific statements and proposals for pedagogical methods that we are going to see now. Some of the most relevant ones in the case of the TDPK think tank include the architect will be increasingly dependent of other professionals with specific abilities. Teamwork training to handle these challenges is vital. And an overview of the normal full process of plan and building and the typical teams and stakeholders involved should be given during the study years, not afterwards. In the case of Heritage Think Tank, some of the most significant proposals regarding teaching methods are the ensuing. Education on conservation and reuse is most effective when based on projects that concern real-life situations and places. The pedagogies adopted should allow for the involvement of professionals from other disciplines and from citizens as well. And secondly, the ability to source information is important where work on existing building is concerned. Project-related research is a core activity in architecture. Well, finally, in the case of sustainability, among their findings, we could highlight architectural education for a sustainable future is research-based. This means that the architecture student, attention, is a contributor of concepts and proposals for design solutions and not a consumer of architectural knowledge. Secondly, and finally, the way to approach architectural sustainability is to pose questions within the multiplicity of possible solutions. Moving now to the final findings and recommendations akin to curriculum structures. Once again, the three think tanks agree on a clear advice. More emphasis should be put on society and actual context of architectural work. This means that an appropriate curriculum gives basic insights in how a society functions and how decisions are taken. If we go now to look for some specific recommendations from the TDPK think tank regarding curriculum structure, we could highlight two. Education on professional knowledge should cover a broader field and present both in mandatory and elective levels for those students that want to deepen in a specific aspect. Then implement organized and well-prepared visits to architecture offices, both big and small, and also public offices, is important. The points of view from members of such offices and considering the differences between them are of great help for the students to get an appropriate overview of what's going on in the professional field. Regarding, once again, curricular structure, but now in the case of Heritage Think Tank, their more relevant proposals include study projects that involve intervention to existing environments should be designed to close the circle. That is, to bring the results of the design back to the starting point by means of a reflection on the impact of the proposal. Every opportunity should be taken to involve external critics and reviewers drawn from the disciplines whose knowledge and experience contributes to the problem statement, as well as from architects with experience in that area. Finally, in the case of Sustainability Think Tank, their two most relevant contributions regarding curriculum structure are, firstly, architectural education for a sustainable future works transdisciplinary. Environmental issues, economic issues, societal issues, and cultural issues should be dealt with in various lectures, courses, and activities. And finally, dealing only with materials and environmental issues is a lame approach for teaching sustainability in architecture. sustainability means actually a complex interdisciplinary approach, and the task of the architect is to orchestrate and accommodate information from many different fields of science and culture. And to conclude with final findings and recommendations, is the moment to talk about continuous professional development. All three think tanks agree once again on one fact, which is that on postgraduate and specialized courses being offered to all practicing architects and being implemented through the universities or other entities. On this specific matter, we could highlight two findings from the TDPK think tank. Here we've got one of the answers that we promised at the very beginning of the speech. 3 to 5 years practice after education is regarded as necessary to make a young architect fully operative. Postgraduate courses for recently educated architects should be offered in order to make the architects more competitive in the market. In countries where post-study practice is not mandatory, this is of special relevance, obviously. All schools giving architectural education should examine their actual situation, establish fruitful collaboration with other parties, and secure that less commercial but professionally relevant courses are offered to architects. Heritage Think Tank recommends, among many other aspects, that in many jurisdictions there are structures, opportunities for schools of architecture to contribute to continuous professional development. And secondly, where specialized skills are being developed in schools, there are often opportunities to provide master classes for professionals or to provide lifelong learning opportunities in the form of workshops for professionals or lectures for lay audiences. Finally, we could highlight the Hyanders Sustainability Think Tank statements. In the EU, there's a huge gap in workforce skills of those who deliver sustainable buildings performing nearly zero emitting buildings standard. This gap in skills also exists within the architecture practice. This issue does not necessarily concern the academic curriculum of the future architect, but it has to be addressed through continuous professional development of the current workforce. Well, and that's all regarding findings. Let's talk just 2 slide comments about the deliverables and the dissemination of the results of the Erasmus Plus project. This presentation has successfully covered the report contents with a special focus on its results. Being the result of a project lasting for 3 years and with the continuous intention of obtaining final and global conclusions, we must accept that this type of work implies some degree of subjectivity in some cases, physical restriction in other, and conclusions that are not fully agreed occasionally. The report has been uploaded along with its 11 attachments to the EAAE website. It's scheduled to upload the whole set of documents to the ACE website as well. And we finally invite to any interested school, institution, or even individual to upload the documents to their website. It's open to everybody to do so. But you have to keep in mind that it's always important to display clearly the authorship and the fact that it's co-funded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. So please, any of you, feel free to download the report and the attachments to upload it to your sites. The only condition which is provided by Brussels is that you have to display that image of the European flag and the sentence saying co-funded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. Then feel free. Well, that's it. Thank you very much. Now, before we come into the open discussion of the results, which would be very interesting, I would like to give the floor to one main editor of each think tank, so they may have the chance to highlight any aspect of their work or may provide an additional personal insight. So first of all, I would like to summon to the platform Jordi Franquesa from the Teaching Architectural Design and Professional Knowledge think tank.
Thank you, Ivan. Well, I'm Jordi Franquesa. I'm head of studies or academical advisor of the School of Architecture in Barcelona. First of all, I have to thank the project leaders to give to our team the confidence to deal with this project challenges, and I have to say also that has been an extraordinary experience. As you know, what has been discussed throughout the Teaching Architectural Design and Professional Knowledge think tank is related with the learning and implementation of acquired knowledge, that is, on the academic period and professional practice and the relationship between the two areas. We've done a lot of work, and I have also to thank the participation of many schools, many students, many teachers, and a lot of professional architects who have helped us to get some conclusions about this really wicked problem. Learning is not a product, it's a process. Or in other words, the knowledge is not received, but is performed. As Ivan said before, learning implies a change in our knowledge, but also in our beliefs, in our behaviors, and in our attitudes, and on the ways of looking at the surrounding reality. I only want to stress out some of the most important moments and findings in our process work. I'm going to be very brief. One of the most happy moments was when we get a clear idea of the meaning of knowledge. And as has been said before, we divide it in 3 items: the knowledge of the discipline, or the core content of curriculums today, architectural theory, history, and broad architectural design training. The second is the knowledge of practicality, or the technical and legal aspects of professional practice, building codes, constructions and detailing and edification regulations. And the third is knowledge of the profession, or the activities and relationships with customers and government entities, the exchange of knowledge with other professionals. This permitted us to go further and to design new strategies and activities to face the problem we were dealing with. Our findings have been already exposed, and you can get more information about that at the final report, but I'd like only to underline 2 questions. The first is very related to why is this a wicked problem. Through our work, we realized that the content of the term architecture, the way it is practiced, and the attitudes to problem solving are different in European countries. Anyway, we could say in general terms and with few reservations that the discipline is quite similar. But its practicality may be very different from country to country, although reasonably similar in each area or region. But to impose even more emotion to this problem, each architect may, in fact, have his own individual attitude confronted with a specific problem. This means that we must be aware of the importance of the site, the context, and the area we are talking about. And the second main question I wanted to point out has to do with the way we are nowadays teaching and the way our students think and face their problems, clearly in a different way we used to do. We must review our methodological strategies to reinforce our academic courses, both in programmatic terms and methodological considerations, taking into account how our students work, in order to build a consistent bridge between the academic and the professional sphere. We need to implement new pedagogical methods to give increased understanding of the great complexity of professional knowledge. For instance, reinforcing the cooperative work between peers, or reinforcing the importance of extracurricular activities as a crucial point in the formation of our students, reinforcing what they call, or we call, the hidden curriculum. The external activities that our students develop besides the regulated studies are fundamental for the construction of their knowledge of the discipline. Not only experiences in an architect's office, but also workshops, travels, other studies, and the personal experience in other fields become valuable inputs for building a wide and rich knowledge. These experiences makes them different, and these kinds of extracurricular activities and interests deserve more focus and recognition. The work of an architect is traditionally a row of separate projects, often with new teams and new collaborators. Most projects have a definite stop and a fresh start. The work is actually a series of new learning situations. Every element of professional knowledge learned by the student during their graduate studies will be renewed, completed, or rejected during the coming years of architectural practice. This will happen as a normal, continuous development. Considering this very important fact and the unique characteristic of our professional our activities, our think tank has come to the conclusion that what is being doing nowadays is more or less well-oriented, but in any case must be reinforced the postgraduate courses, as also must be reinforced the hidden curriculum and the social aspects vinculated to the discipline. Anyway, what is important is not only to get prepared architects, but above all, curious and motivated architects. We have anyway to remember that we are just here to improve our way of teaching architecture, our way of learning it, just to get in the future good professional architects that will have to improve simply our way of life. Thank you.
Now I would like to summon to the platform Professor Loveling Keeley, who will talk on behalf of the Heritage Think Tank.
Thank you, Ivan. I'm going to be very brief, and I suppose there are really only two main points I want to make. One of them is probably related to the work of the Heritage Think Tank more directly than the second one. So, say when I speak in relation to the wickedness of the problem of heritage, part of that has to do with what we're dealing with is the question of inheritance, not heritage as it is branded, but the fact that we have inherited most of the environment that we inhabit and that we use and we will use into the future. So that part of the obligation, part of the professional activity of the architect is to collaborate in the transmission of that into the future. That's partly a sustainability argument. It's partly to do with our maintenance of the culture of architecture, and it's partly to do with what is required in terms of social cohesion and the maintenance of identity. These are parts of the, if you like, the issues that go to make the question of heritage a challenge for architecture, because as we know, the dominant ethos in architecture is design-led, and the dominant learning mode is through the design studio. So the question we would say is, again, part of the wickedness of the problem of heritage in relation to architectural education is what is the implications for the design studio, for architectural learning in our schools at present, and how should they be adapted or adjusted to reflect, if you like, an emerging consciousness that we're at a particular stage in human history where we have to take these things seriously and take them into account. So, in a way, when we look at these things, we have, I'd say again, two minor questions to address. One I would suggest is that there is a difficulty within our dominant pedagogies of incorporating special areas of knowledge, whether to do with technologies or to do with, say, particular techniques that have to be known. The second one is that there are architectures of the subjects we teach. I'm talking now about the architecture of history, not the history of architecture, but the architecture of history, where in fact we teach architecture in a way that looks to buildings almost as they were conceived, not as they have evolved and changed over time. And until our understanding of architectural history actually can include our understanding of the evolution of buildings, we are going to be poorly equipped intellectually to engage with the transmission of those buildings to future generations. That's a challenge, an intellectual challenge, that faces us as teachers and educators in architecture. Okay. The second and more general point is really to do with, if you like, the nature of wicked problems. And here I have to say that this particular project, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity of it, allowed me to get in touch with somebody who was very important to me in my own formation. I was studying in Berkeley. One of my professors was Horst Rittel, who was one of the authors of the idea of the wicked problem. Okay? Now, what one knows is that very often wicked problems tend not to be solved. What happens with wicked problems is they tend to be re-articulated in ways that allow partial solutions and temporary solutions to emerge over time. And one of the things I think we need to understand, if we accept that wicked problems apply to architectural education, is the nature of the beast that we deal with. We all work in institutional frameworks, and that institutions have their limitations and they can only operate in certain ways. And some problems will persist. An example from yesterday is that in projects in other countries, in other cultures and so on, it is difficult to get beyond the fact that asymmetrical relationships exist. And that problem persists. So we have to find ways of actually working, recognizing the asymmetry. So I would just simply also say that we recognize that some of the problems that we address in the future come up against the questions of time and the times and the way we structure learning opportunities. And it's very clear in the area of heritage, as it is in other areas, that we need to incorporate research into our teaching. And there are different time frames that have to be adjusted in that. Research tends to be longitudinal to be useful, and design studios are very often opportunistic. So we have to find ways of actually somehow recalibrating our understanding and having long-term views about how we incorporate what we've learned through research into design studios. They're my two observations. Thank you very much.
Finally, I would like to give the floor to Alberto Delvaux, representing the Sustainability Think Tank.
Yes, thank you. Just a few words. So I will remember that the former council, when decided to open this challenge, had the intention also to open a road for all the schools, fostering internal relations among the schools and with the professional bodies. So this was the intention, and we hope that other schools will go on in this activity, applying through this very good plan, this very good project, which is able to interviewing meetings in different countries to really build culture and understanding problem, and having the participation of the students, which has been fundamental and which is fundamental in the case of our sustainability group, because the students, that's an opinion that we all had, is that they could understand the level of their responsibility of the profession of architect in this era, which is not so easy to achieve. And my intention is also to read a very, very brief phrase from the report, one that you chose, Ivan. But it's going on also. I'd say the way to approach architectural sustainability as a wicked problem, means to put it into question within a multiplicity of other questions and possible solutions. Therefore, this is the other phrase. It helps the students to experiment and position themselves within complex field of design, both in the sense of approaching the problem and also in the sense of understanding the task of design as a multidisciplinary operation. So this is really related to responsibility. And in a certain way, there are now somebody saying that sustainability is the other part of responsibility of the architect. So I have to say that it has been a very demanding work that we did. And I want to thank all the colleagues that works in these activities, the students, and because I'm the last one, I'd like to thank really Ivan for this publication, which is an important work that you collected. Thank you very much.
Well, just last one comment, which is, if there's something that all of us that are here today in this hall we have in common, is that we do care architecture education. So all of us are eager in trying to improve our schools and institutions. And in order to do so, we need chances and knowledge. This project has provided us with a chance to produce the knowledge by ourselves. Actually, it's not to produce, to harvest the knowledge that was already there. You know, when you need that knowledge, having the chance to harvest and to produce it by yourself is a pleasure. So I think it's been a tough task, but it's been fantastic to ride this roller coaster. And I want to thank also EAAE former president now, Carlotto Ellefsen, for absolutely believing that EAAE was the right hub for hosting these projects. I said it at the very beginning of the presentation, you know, if EAAE wants to play a fundamental role in developing this sort of knowledge, this is the hub for applying for these projects. So I encourage our new freshly elected president, Oya Atalay, to think about this, because I think that this sort of initiative should have a continuity, and I'm sure she will do, because she will be a successful president in the same way that our former president Carlotto has been. So well, right now maybe it's the moment for comments and debate. We would appreciate to have some feedback. So everybody's a little bit tired, or we have Carlotto.
Very good job, Ivan. And I think, you know, this, the way that Laughlin said it, you know, we're not going to find the answers, but we are reformulating the questions, which is a very essential way of putting the way you handle wicked problems. But what I wanted to say is that, and especially to Dubravko Basic, which is here representing ACE, is that I think in a way at the moment the role of ACE in this work is a little under-communicated, because ACE is a senior partner in this work, you know, having put a lot of efforts into it and having put 6 people in it. And you know, as the report, not in the writing of the report, but in the way the report is presented in, you know, symbols and all these things we have to do and readjustments before Luciano Lazzari sees the result in a way, because the ACE have to be given its share in the report in a nice manner. I think I haven't seen this before, but I saw it in the presentation right now that we have to give ACE much better credit that we have been able to do, because they have been a senior partner with 6 people into the report. So I can take the responsibility, but there's a little error here that we have to correct, because I think that was the reason we got the project, because we were applying together with ACE in a way, and that's we have to disseminate the result also in this way. I say this here for yeah, so ACE can hear it in a way. Thank you.
As I explained this morning, I think with the Education Academy we have we are completing a cycle of these 3 topics and themes, and I'm very happy with this final report now of this project, because I think it provides fruitful ground for further development, and it's very clear that there are many topics, as it is wicked, but I think some of them are for grasping, I think, and maybe others need to be abandoned or to be studied again. But I think particularly the thing of the architecture of things I think is something which we should take in mind. If we are talking about the right pedagogy, it's necessary to see how things are structured, and I think it was a very nice outcome that maybe our way of looking to pedagogy is different. And the other thing what I want to remark is this connection with practice. It's something which also in the workshops continuously emerge. We need to get into contact with the material as it is, as it evolves in time, as it is used, etc. So I think it's really a very rich basis for also our discussions to substantiate and provide another look and provide other wordings which will enrich the Charter on Education, I hope. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Ivan, for this very detailed presentation. I think that, I mean, for me, these kind of projects illustrate my idea of what EAAE actually is, a kind of platform for receiving practices, ideas, and the various ways that the variety of schools have to approach education. Okay, so I think this is quite important. I have a question concerning the first task, the relationship between profession and education. You were talking about 18 schools. This is a kind of basic database. Why 18? I mean, you forwarded the questionnaire to more and you have received only 18. You have chosen 18 for specific reasons?
No, actually, we never referred to this information as a survey. We always called it a picture because it was just a picture, obviously, with 18. It's during the first workshop in Barcelona, we noticed that we had like a lack of background that we needed to solve immediately within 15 days in order to have like a background of what was going on. So we directly addressed to those schools that we knew that would save certain results within a week. That was the period that we provided. So that's why we haven't made a special allusion to the results that actually are just barely depicted in one annex. There's not a specific. They were spread all over Europe, but it was only a matter of making it fast. We thought about increasing the scope and about sending the survey to more schools, but actually the information that we had with this 18 was enough to pursue our research. That's it.
I'm asking this because in many countries you have national legislation which facilitates the relationship with practice, and some other countries you don't. So the percentages you get at the end are biased by this.
Thank you very much for the fantastic work. And the question is how to continue. What is the dissemination? The very first thing would be the workshop in Athens of the Education Academy, where the question of studio teaching will be very much also in focus. So I was wondering, especially the first group thinking on and working on the architectural design project, if anybody is planning to join that workshop and bring the expertise and the knowledge and experiences, which would be very, very welcome. And then the next question of the other project groups, I think in research group, there will be a lot to discuss. So I would very much encourage when there is so much work done and expertise that just doesn't stay there, actively goes on to be used, involved and opened up. And probably there will be some other new projects coming in.
Well, it hasn't been mentioned during this exposition because it would have made it too long, but the final report includes a final chapter about certain future research lines, which mentions something quite interesting, for instance, about, you know, if architects are supposed to take the leadership in transversal groups for making the world evolve, then ethics become very important. And ethics are something that we have forgotten for a long period within architecture. So this is, for instance, a fantastic topic for a new project. And also deepening in how to deal within these transdisciplinary groups. I have mentioned many times other professionals or other experts from neighboring, I would say, for neighboring fields, but we never happen to mention them. We just have some examples. So another very interesting research project would be about, okay, which neighboring fields do we have to focus on, or how can we build these bridges with them? And one of the most funny things is also not only this, is even descending to practicality. When most of us were looking at the results, most of them, and I'm sure that this has happened to you as well, looked very obvious. And most of you have had the feeling of, okay, 3 years for reaching this result, maybe I knew this before coming to Bordeaux. But then, even the most simple thing, when you come back to your school and you try to implement this, it's impossible. Because professors do not want to get out their comfort area. They just want to teach what they have got already prepared on their PowerPoints. So it's impossible to push your school forward. So, you know, strategies about how to move the transatlantic, which many big schools are like transatlantics, it's also, maybe it's a minor topic, but you know, how can we really tease our peers to come with us in these adventures? It's not that easy, but I think right now it's being the biggest setback when we're trying to improve our schools. So this is another topic, though. But I'm sure that we will come up with 8 or 10 if we carry on with this.
Yes, I was asking myself the same question, in fact, because I was reading the conclusion, and many things seems quite usual, let's say, we have in mind, but changing the school with this is very difficult. So perhaps something is what can we do with this result, with this report? And I think the strength of this report, because it's very rich and there's many things inside, and we have to focus on some ideas, and I think the conclusion is very clear about this. The strength of the report is that it's not a research, it's something that EAAE, meaning 140 schools, let's say, ACE, are saying together. So maybe we should translate it into a sort of statement or something like this, saying that's what we say all together, and then it will feel, I mean, it will touch a bit more our peers or teachers in schools, and say, okay, it's not only a report, it's a statement, and who is saying this, 140 schools and ACE together, meaning education and professional at the same time.
Just shortly, in response to what Martin said and Carlotta earlier, and I would like, on behalf of the ACE, I would like to say that we were very privileged to take part in the project. Thank you for inviting us initially, Carlotta, in 2014, was it? Six, as you said, six of us, 6 representatives of ACE participated in the project. I hope and I would like to think that all of us gave our best to the project, and definitely the question is what to do next. And I think the one strong policy position or paper or statement could be a sort of immediate result from this. If you remember, there was one done in Milan, but maybe something a little bit stronger. And ACE likes to brag that we speak for 500,000 of architects of Europe, which in a way is true, you know, when you count all the associations. But I think definitely with this project, or with the collaboration that comes, that will come in the future, I hope the ACE and the EAAE have to stay tightly connected, especially having in mind all the, let's say, well, from our point of view, mostly the sort of the regulation pressure that's coming from the European Commission, and the ACE is trying to fight in EU level and in national levels, also through supporting chambers, and some of this pressure will also come down to the school as well, sooner or later. Thank you.
Yes, I think I'm still heading the meeting, so. Thank you, Ivan. Thanks a lot. You've done a tremendous job, and you know, this is, I consider this as a very successful project. And then we're talking about how to disseminate it, because of course this is a report. It's okay to send to the EU. The EU has already got it. Yeah, and they have the very the clear. You know, I got from I can't pronounce his first name. Huge Bekar. It's a big shot in EU education culture, and he wrote to me relatively enthusiastically this morning and said, "I have read the report. Where is the executive's summary?" Because you know, this is interesting, and of course it's no problem for us to write an executive summary on the basis of this. You know, this is, I guess Ivan can do this, you know, and he needs to do it. But there's also, and we can also change the appearance of the report on the website, so the credit to ACE comes clearer through. This is not in the content, it's just about how we handle the graphics. So it's not a big problem, it's a small problem. But then it's the interesting thing, and because this is a report, and in a way it's sufficient for our report to our financiers, but of course there's a potential here to develop into a booklet that can be sent to all offices of architecture in Europe that are part of ACE, and to all schools that are part of the EAAE. So there's a potential here which is very interesting, and this is a thing that we have to discuss. You know, what are we going to do? This is sufficient. You know, somehow it's sufficient with all the other pages that are attached to it, and we're on the websites and everything. But there's a potential here to rework it once more and make it into a document that can be disseminated relatively widely, not wildly, but widely. And this is interesting both in terms of what we're discussing here, but it's also interesting for us, you know, to put the EAAE on the table in the offices. You know, that's interesting for us also, you know, to get our name known and get ourselves acknowledged as an organization that is working decently within this discussion about relationship between practice and procession. So in the end, you know, wow, this is very good work, but it needs some, you know, to reach out, it still needs some editorial work. I think that's the correct word. So thank you. I suggest we give an applause to everybody, you know, who's been into this project.